Hello, my name is Miguel D'Souza and welcome to today's Google News Initiative live training session. Today we're going to be looking at a tool called Pinpoint. But before we begin, I'd like to start today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of these lands on which we meet and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters and community. I'll pay my respects to them and their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Miguel D'Souza. I'm Google's News Teaching Fellow for 2020 and 21. I'm a journalist and teacher trainer. I've worked on the internet putting out news since 1994 for companies like AAP, news.com.au, 7 News and SBS. Thanks for joining us today. Feel free to ask any questions during the live broadcast by typing them into the chat box. We'll go through the chat at the end and try and answer any of your questions. Now, what we're going to look at today is a little investigation tool called Pinpoint, but that's part of Google's news initiative's aims to support quality journalism, to help evolve new business models for the industry and deliver technological solutions for media. Google develops tools to support journalists and at all levels of the industry, and that's why today we're looking at tool sets to help sustain investigative journalists, freelancers, reporters of all kinds who basically may want to use tools like this. So today we're going to look at tools which will let you conduct a deep investigation, which focuses mainly in this instance on data in your storytelling. Many of the tools that we'll be using come from the Google Journalist Studio. It contains a suite of tools to help journalists work in a secure, safe, and importantly, an encrypted environment. Do visit that URL that you can see on screen if you want to know more. But today, we're going to look at an application of Google's search, artificial intelligence, and other technologies in one amazing application. It's called Pinpoint, and it literally saves hours and hours of time in the process of sorting through large amounts of data. Before we get there, I'd like to show you a couple of resources which have huge potential for data-based investigations in Australia. First up, this is the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. They have an amazing database tool they called Ocrplf. By providing, and I'll pop the URL down there on the screen for you, by providing access to a huge trove of government records and open databases, and in some cases lead documents, the Aleph database can be a handy way to follow Australian money into foreign markets and hands. And of course, it can also be used in reverse. Now, here's a quick look at how it works. You can search the entire Aleph archive using a standard or filtered search, and it will retrieve results from across its linked databases. Let me just give you a better view of that screen. And you can batch download up to 10,000 documents at once from the website. You can also browse databases, and there are 4 databases specific to Australia. Here's a look, for instance, at details of Australia's sanctions against Myanmar. These can be downloaded for use in a tool like Pinpoint. More on that later. There are tools on the Aleph website you can use. The best of these are the alerts feature, which will notify you of any updates in the searches or investigations you conduct. And importantly, you can download up to 10,000 individual documents at any given time. The detail available here is useful if you are building a series of relationships between, say, for instance, in this case, the Burmese junta and the Myanmar Investment Corporation, which is known to have investments in Australia, for instance. Now, a really cool feature is the ability to export all of the documents you find in a few clicks. For instance, I was able to download all of the 1,800 records I needed from the Australian sanctions list pretty much immediately. You just simply hit the export button and just download what you need. Now, keep that one in mind, because I'm going to actually show you what I did to analyze it all a bit later. Just to be clear, this was a list of 1,826 names, addresses, and other entries from the register of companies, individuals, and nations that Australia has imposed individual sanctions against. So there's quite a lot of detail, but I'll show you what Pinpoint can do with it a bit later on. Another significant database available through the LF tool is the Open Contracting Australia Procurement Database. Now, here's an example of a listing for entries for KPMG. They contain details of which division of KPMG did the work, where, plus some handy contact details for the office in the finance department in this case, which contracted them. Each item contains an ABN. You can see it down the bottom here. It's called a registration number in this case. That can also be used to match against other data. And now it's time for me to show you yet another very important database. This is a thing called the Contract Logs database. I'll just share the URL with you in a second. There it is. Now, this database is published under Creative Commons license by the Department of Finance, and these are AusTender materials. And the ABN here can be used to cross-reference details in this particular log, which actually logs details of agencies, suppliers, standing offers, categories, dates, terms of the tender, lots of details there, all taken from the AusTender's website. So for instance, you're looking at a summary page for KPMG, which has gathered together, for instance, details including all of the ABNs that KPMG bills the taxpayer with, any associated companies that will fall under these contract awards, how these contracts were procured, which departments they work in, how much money each contract is worth. The detail and the potential for cross-referencing is quite incredible. I should also mention that it is the work of a somebody on Twitter by the name of @Maxius. Let me just quickly share you their details so you can look them up on Twitter. But it's important to mention that this work is pretty much a result of our Department of Finance making tendering documents and documentation available via Creative Commons license, which I think is a fantastic thing to allow journalists to be able to investigate government business. But next up, we're going to move to having a look at Pinpoint. So far, we've looked at 2 new sources for data to support an investigation. Now, let's have a look at Google's Pinpoint and how it could be a useful tool in sorting through huge amounts of data. Hopefully, I'll give you a good idea of how it works. So, we've looked at some interesting new sources of data, but what do you do with it? Well, let me introduce Google's newest tool for journalists called Pinpoint. Put simply, Pinpoint is a data analysis tool. You can put up to 200,000 documents of different types into it, and it will let you sort through them in seconds. There's no need to understand a database scripting language when you can simply upload it to Pinpoint. And here's how it works. Pinpoint has a few key features that make it such a useful tool for journalists looking to sort of mine a large trove of documents, like thousands of them, to extract names, places, company names, or organizations. It makes the process of finding associations between entities named in document troves very easy. Through a combination of Google search and an application of artificial intelligence that can understand misspellings, handwriting, and can even extract text from images. Pinpoint users receive 100 gig of storage space. Pinpoint only counts collections that you've created towards this space. Okay, so again, 100 gig is a massive, massive amount of data. And you can manage it if you have way more than that, simply by just rotating what you've got through there, or alternatively, I suppose, creating alternative accounts. But I'd say the former is a better option. Pinpoint can use optical character recognition, artificial intelligence, and Google search to process and understand thousands of documents in seconds, from text in pictures to handwriting in up to 8 different languages. Now, recently, Pinpoint added audio transcription language support, which allows users to select the transcription language they want their doc translated from or to. Now, this includes English, French, German, Italian, Polish, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Dutch, and Hebrew, with more to come. Hopefully, the more to come includes many of the Asian languages spoken by the majority of people on Earth. Pinpoint will default to whatever your language setting is, but you can change it to default to any of the languages I've already mentioned. For many files, Pinpoint will OCR and enable keyword searching and entity filtering. For files like audio, images, and some text, it'll convert to PDF and then allow a highlighting of that text. And in others, it'll allow search and keyword filtering, but you'll have to download the original doc to read the entry in full. I'll show you what I mean. If your file types are not supported by Pinpoint's extensive range of files, you can always convert them to PDF outside of Pinpoint using a conversion tool or a save as functionality. Just quickly, I'm going to run through some of the examples. So, for instance, Pinpoint will OCR and enable keyword search and entity filtering for these sorts of file types: PDFs, emails, images, TXT documents, Microsoft Word, Excel, and even some audio, MP3, MP4, M4A, WAV, FLAC, Windows audio, RAM, and the 2 AIFs. It will also highlight text in PDFs and files that it's automatically converted. So this is a limited function, but it will still highlight you entities in that, in things like some JPEGs, Word docs, and PowerPoints. And in some cases, you may only be able to search and filter the documents, but you'll then have to download them to actually read them. And those include some Excel, some CSVs, and some HTML pages. But still, they still can be processed through Pinpoint. So that's a really important thing to remember. Okay, so next up, entity filtering is kind of like the secret sauce of Pinpoint. It extracts names, places, organizations, and company names from text, audio, and images, and then makes it available to cross-reference. Now, that's the powerful part of Pinpoint that speeds up data analysis. It acts as a research assistant to retrieve matches for names, places, or companies and organizations. These are clickable and allow for cross-referencing. Now, in some cases, Pinpoint will extract those names, but you'll have to go to the original documents to read them. The maximum number of files per collection is 200,000, but this may vary depending upon file type and size. When you create a new collection, it's private by default. You can share that access, with people, meaning they can see, search, and filter the documents you've added to it. You can also remove people you've shared the collection with. Once you remove them, they won't be able to access the collection or its documents. Now, let me give you a quick demonstration, okay? So here is my Pinpoint. Let me just stop that one. I'm just going to share my screen again with you so that you can see my screen. So there you go. Now, so here's a Pinpoint, and this is how it works. When you get to the Pinpoint page, you'll be taken straight to your workspace, okay? It will work with gmail.com addresses for now. What you do is you simply hit this button here. Let me just make it a little bigger. hit this button here to create a new private collection. And then you will then be able to select those. Let me just quickly go to another one. Okay, so you hit the create a new collection button, give it a name. We'll call this one Firma Investment. Now, then you simply create. And once your folder is created, you can then start adding documents. Now you can drag or drop, or in this case, just simply select. I've put all of my documents into the one folder. I've called it Myanmar. So I'm just going to, as you can see, I'll have to manually select all of them, but I'm happy with all of those, so I'm just going to upload them. And that's exactly how it works. Now, because of the dangers of working with the internet and live technology, I've actually created a pinpoint myself earlier, which I'll show you right here. So these are all the same documents. Now, I will tell you a couple of little things. I've uploaded things like PowerPoint documents. I've uploaded PDFs, Excel spreadsheets. I've even uploaded 2 extremely large audio files. I'm going to show you one of them and what it did first. Now, let me just see if I can find the bigger of the 2, because here it is. This is actually a transcript created by Google's audio by basically listening to the audio from a conference which was 1 hour and 43 minutes long. Now, you can see it's picked up a lot of rubbish from the initial conference, and certainly things like the audios and stuff like that. But later on, it started to transcribe the whole conference. And again, that means, and I can check my audio, and I'll just quickly pull up another audio file that's done. Here we go. Here is an introductory speech by Aung San Suu Kyi. And as you can see, it's transcribed all her audio. If I want to check, I can simply click on one of these buttons here, and this will play me the audio. I won't do that now just for time. And as you can see here, it's transcribed her entire speech, which then means the speech is actually available as to be cross-referenced in the entity filtering that you can see over here. And just to show you what it's done, it's extracted people, lots and lots and lots of people. It's extracted organizations, and it's also extracted locations in Myanmar and elsewhere. Now, these are now all available to me to sort through and cross-reference. Now, you can see here, the audio files language is set to US English, but if I wanted to, I could change it to a whole bunch of different languages. Pretty clever. So, you can see there, I'll just give you an idea that the audio file, which was a 1 hour, 43 minute YouTube video, took close to 45 minutes to upload and process. But that was me deliberately trying to stress test it. That was a massive MP3 file, and a lot of it was rubbish. But it did upload it, and it did transcribe it. A more conventional speech worked a lot more smoothly. A more conventional speaker, like Aung San Suu Kyi, who has a very clear voice, did work a lot more smoothly, and in fact uploaded a lot more quickly. I can't really give you a time, but the first one took 45 minutes. But when it was done, it was available to process. Okay, so that's our little live demo. I'm just going to go back and show you a couple of examples that you might want to consider. Here is something I did using archived case files from the Federal Court's Public Interest Register. Now, if you've been following the aftermath of the Brereton Report into atrocities in Afghanistan and the various court battles of VC recipient Ben Robert Smith, Pinpoint can allow you to upload all the court documents held on the Federal Court website's archive to Pinpoint using a batch downloading tool. For instance, I downloaded all of the 41 PDF files that they had and have created a Pinpoint which I can now search and cross-match and filter. And in this case, I'm able to then cross-reference items that are in there against previous cases. Now, just on the data that you put into Pinpoint, just how safe is it? Well, look, Google says that its industry-leading privacy and security technologies are built into all of their products, including Pinpoint. And look, please read about it more there, because I know that security and privacy are extremely important when it comes to your documents and data. Also, you might remember that Ocrplf database, which provided access to a list of names and companies that was subject of sanctions. Well, I uploaded all 1,826 entries to Pinpoint, which pretty much took seconds. After that, Pinpoint's entity extraction went to work and extracted hundreds of names, places, and organizations from this document. It's really quite remarkable. Recently, the DDoS Secrets website made available the hacked records of the Myanmar Investment Corporation, which has close ties to the Burmese military junta, which has killed up to 700 people in protests against the junta's March military coup. Well, using a search for mentions of the word Australia, I was able to find all sorts of interesting projects that feature joint investments between Australian companies and the Myanmar Investment Corporation. Well, there were only 31 PDFs, so uploading them took seconds. Pinpoint extracted names, places, companies from these documents, listing addresses for people who had registered businesses in either Myanmar or in Australia. Using a search for mentions of the word Australia, I was able to find all sorts of projects that feature joint venture investments between Australian companies and the Myanmar Investment Corporation, like this multi-story pub and hotel called Ned Kelly. We're almost done, but I'd like to add a quick mention of how you might want to get started on incorporating some machine learning into your investigations. The course available on g.co/news training will build on the first of our journalism AI courses. And this time we'll move from the theoretical foundations of machine learning into a practical building of a model using AutoML. Do go along to g.co/news training. You will find some remarkable resources there. You can sign up for all sorts of courses, including those machine learning courses I just mentioned. And certainly do email us if you do work in or run a newsroom to request any free training or support in digital tools or for your newsroom. My name is Miguel D'Souza. This has been the Google News Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fantastic to have you here, and I look forward to you joining me next time for another Google News Initiative training session.